Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another episode of Sanur Sessions. Let's get stuck into it. So you'll see a different background today. I'm trying to change things up a bit. I don't want to be sitting in the lounge room all the time with filming the kitchen in the background. I'm going to change things up. I'm going to try and make this look a little bit better in the future. It's a bit boring now with just a pure white wall in the background. I've got a few ideas about what I might do, but you know, we'll work on it. At the moment, it's a bit bland. In the future, I hope to build it up step by step into something that looks pretty good. Let's talk about the news. Over the past couple of weeks, there's been a whole heap of disruptions down at Bali airport, which was preventing flights from landing and taking off. And it depended on which airline you were flying with as to whether you were going to be cancelled, delayed, or being able to land. And it was a day by day, hour by hour proposition. Things seem to have cleared up quite a lot. As you can see right now, there are airplanes landing every 5 seconds going into that airport. Well, not every 5 minutes, just landing into the airport, taking off. Things seem to be clear, but that volcano that was spewing out ash about 800 kilometers away and blowing it across Bali seems to have quietened down a little bit. There was another volcano that was spewing ash out in Java. I think it was Gunung Semeru, which is a really massive volcano. It's I think it's the tallest one in Java, and you can see that when you go and visit Java because it's one of the highlights of Java itself. I'll actually mention a little bit more about that later on when we talk about where to travel in Indonesia. But needless to say, both of those volcanoes seem to have settled down. The ash has blown away and flights are continuing on as normal. I flew through the airport just a few days ago, and for me it felt like absolutely nothing was going on at all. It was just a normal day and really nothing to worry about. So let's hope it stays that way. If things change, I will post a little update on my YouTube channel, so keep an eye out. According to sanurweekly.com, apparently 6 warungs down at Pantai Mertasari burnt down on Thursday last week. Now, I was down there this morning. I didn't see which ones were burnt down. I couldn't see any warungs that were burnt down. Maybe you know which ones were burnt down, so please leave a comment below. But I assume it wasn't the ones that do the pork satay, because that's right on the edge of that beachfront path, which I was at this morning. And I'm assuming it wasn't those ones in the car park just next to the beachfront path, because I didn't see any evidence there. My suspicion is, and I don't know, is that it was those ones that were way across the other side of that larger car park that almost never has any cars in it. And I'm not really sure, but if you do know, let me know. It's devastating for the people that own those warungs, and hopefully they can get back on their feet soon. Let's talk about what's going on in Sanur. Well, funnily enough, there's not actually a lot going on in terms of events in Sanur. I actually get updated every now and then on events that are happening tomorrow, and that's not really good enough for me to be able to make a video and tell people about what's going on. For me to find out the day before an event's happening is probably too late. So if you do have any events that you know of that are coming up that you'd like other people to know about, let me know at least a few days in advance, preferably a week in advance. So things like markets or dance events or some other cultural event, festivals, running events. All of these things have been happening in Sanur, and I haven't been able to cover them because I only find out like a couple of days before. And there's some of these things that I would want to go to personally that I don't even get to go to because I don't even know about them until it's too late. That said, I have been working on a video about what's happening for Christmas in Sanur. Now, as you know, there are lots of places you can go out for dinner in Sanur at Christmas time. Usually there's a Christmas Eve dinner and what they call a breakfast buffet, but it actually starts at midday, sort of like the Christmas lunch that you might traditionally have. Those things are really amazing to go to in Bali. Last year, I was a little bit late to the party and I ended up having to go to Nusa Dua to have my Christmas lunch. And that turned out to be a really good thing anyway, because I was at the Western and that was amazing. But I'm putting something together. I'm going to list, I don't know, 10, 15 places you can go in Sanur. Not all of those places are going to have availability. I know that the Hyatt Regency is always the most popular place they go and have for Christmas lunch, and maybe that's already booked out. But I'll put that together and keep an eye out for that over the next week. Indonesia beyond Bali. So keeping on the theme of volcanoes and actually Gunung Semeru in Java, That's actually located in East Java. And you don't really hear of that much as a tourist destination. What you normally hear of in East Java is Gunung Bromo. And it's an amazing, amazing sight to see. It has a lot of similarities with Gunung Batur in Bali, where you have a large caldera, a collapsed volcano, with a new volcano growing up in the middle. And in Gunung Bromo, you've actually got a few volcanoes poking up out of that caldera. It's really interesting when you see them from the viewpoint in the morning. It's absolutely incredible. But what's even more interesting is that Gunung Semeru is the one in the background that points up like that. It's a huge volcano that's over 3,000 meters tall that points up over the back of them. And it's all a part of the Bromo Semeru National Park. It's a large area actually, and if you have time to go there, the way that it's normally visited is that once you arrive, you use a jeep to go to the viewpoint in the early morning to see the sunrise over Bromo with Semeru in the background, usually piping off a bit of smoke or ash or whatever it is. And then after that, you'll travel with your jeep down into the caldera, and then you'll get to climb Bromo, which is not too difficult. There are some steps there as well, and then you'll get to look into, it looks like hell really when you look down into Bromo itself. It's fantastic. Now, for those that want to explore a little bit more, you can then get a driver to take you to the other side of the caldera, where there's a road that goes outside the caldera, and then over the back way you can go down to Semeru and have a look at some lakes, some villages around there. And if you're really adventurous and you're going on a longer trip, you can actually travel from your accommodation at the edge of Bromo right down to the city of Malang, which is right over the other side of the caldera. And that's an amazing trip, incredible scenery, and the valleys that have been carved out by the volcanoes over the years are just so steep, so sharp, and there's people farming on the sides of them. And as you travel down the road to Malang from Bromo, it's just incredible. Now, to get to Bromo from Bali, and I guess from anywhere really, the jumping off point for most people is the town of Probolinggo in East Java. And Probolinggo is 2 hours from Surabaya, and it's also a few hours from Banyuwangi in the very east of Java. So if you were coming from Bali, let's say you had a car and a driver that was going to take you there, and it's possible to do that. You would first get the car to take you to Gilimanuk in the very west of Bali, catch the ferry across, which the car can go on, and then from Banyuwangi find your way across to Probolinggo, and then go straight up the mountain to a place called Chamorro Lawang, which is where your accommodation would be for the night. On public transport, which is also a very doable option, and I've done it myself before, you can catch a bus from Bali to probably Probolinggo direct. It will take you on the ferry. You get off the bus while you're on the ferry going across the water there. Then you get back on, and it'll take you all the way to Probolinggo, and then you change from that bus to local transport up the mountain. It's a little bit of a scam central around Probolinggo when you're trying to get up to Bromo. I've had problems in the past, but if you're a little bit sort of patient and you've got time to spare and you want to negotiate, you can get a fair price up there. There is public transport, but you get stuffed around on that as well. Last time I was there, I just got a guy on a motorbike to take me up. I was in shorts and t-shirt when I got on the back of the bike because it was boiling hot down in Probolinggo, a little bit like Bali temperatures. But as you climb that mountain up to 2,000 meters above sea level to where Chamorro Lawang is and where your accommodation is, the temperature drops sharply. And by the time I was at the top, I was absolutely freezing in my shorts and t-shirt. So it's a little bit of a bit of advice, I guess, if you're going to somewhere like Bromo, just be aware that it can be really, really cold, even though you're in the tropics. It can get down to 0 in some of these places in Java, especially when you're looking at somewhere like the Dieng Plateau, which is in central Java. You can get frost and ice on the ground. It can be really cold, especially in the colder months of June, July. So just bear that in mind, that you will need your shorts and t-shirts for the lowland, but in high altitudes, you're going to need something more than just a jumper or a sweater. You probably need a few layers just so you can keep warm. And then as the sun comes out, you might just take a few layers off, and you might actually end up with a t-shirt. anyway. I absolutely love Bromo. It's one of the highlights of Java, of Indonesia. It really is fantastic. I highly recommend it. Let's talk about Indonesian food. So today I want to talk about gorengan, and I've actually spoken about gorengan a little bit on the channel in the past. In some of my videos I've talked about when you want to snack in Indonesia, you want to ngemil or jajan, you want to go snacking for food. Gorengan is one of the most common things to snack on in Indonesia. So if you're catching a bus across Java, you'll have guys jumping on the bus and trying to sell you gorengan, usually fried tofu, and they'll have a little tiny chili, bird's eye chili in there that you can eat with your tofu. Sometimes it's warm, sometimes it's cold, but it's always super juicy and super tasty. It's so popular to have gorengan as an Indonesian when you're traveling around just to fill your belly, and I really love it as well. Now, it's not healthy food, that's for sure, but there are different types of gorengan you can have. The main ones are tofu, fried tofu with a little bit of a skin on it, tempeh, fried, sometimes with a skin on it as well, or a batter. Absolutely beautiful. It's actually my favorite one, I think, is the fried tempeh. You can also get things like a vegetable patty. In West Java we would call that bala bala. Bala bala is amazing. I'm not sure if they call that bakwan or not, but that's part of your gorengan. Sometimes you get spring rolls, which would be called lumpia goreng. Absolutely beautiful. And I guess you could also call some sweet things like pisang goreng or fried bananas part of gorengan as well, because sometimes you'll get the fried bananas chucked in with some of the savoury things as well, and you've just got a big pile of fried stuff and you can just go crazy eating all the fried stuff, and I absolutely love it. The absolute best gorengan I've ever had was in Dieng. The Dieng Plateau is in central Java, and it's an incredible place in Java and one of my favourite places to visit. It's incredibly cold there as well, and one of the things that you can do when it's raining, cold, misty, and you're really in that sort of a funky vibe, but there's other people around, what you can do is go to a little warung and sit there, and the guy's got a big vat of boiling oil and he's just frying stuff, and you can just pick up these steaming hot pieces of gorengan and just down them, and you might even have a little cup of indomie as well, or some freshly fried potatoes that they grow up there in that area. And it's just a really, I don't know, it's a really homely comfort food in Indonesia to have when it's really cold and you want to have something comforting. Now, gorengan is also available in Sanur. You can actually go down to the beachfront, and I did a video on beachfront snacks, but there's people who sell gorengan on the beachfront, and they'll have a little cabinet filled with fried stuff in there, and they'll put it in a little packet and they'll put a bit of sauce on the top of it. They'll have fried spring rolls in there, a bit of tempeh, a bit of tofu. Absolutely delicious. Dirt cheap, dirt cheap. That's something I would highly recommend you try out if you're down at the beach in Sanur. Usually down at Pantai Karang, I know there's a lady down there that sells gorengan, and she's down there from early morning until evening. Check it out. Let's talk about the weather. I don't need the weather apps, I just stick my head out the window. But having said that, I have got onto the weather apps as well, because it should add a little bit of context to what I'm about to say. It has been bright and sunny and beautiful weather over the past few days. Hasn't been boiling hot as it had been maybe about a month ago, and that seems a little bit counterintuitive because we're getting into the hotter part of the year. But what happened about a week ago was there was a torrential downpour here over the course of a few days, really heavy rain, and it seems to have brought a bit of coolness into the air. Along with that, we have some high level cloud that's hanging around, and it's just filtering out of the sun a little bit, so it's just not as hot as it was before. That said, it hasn't been raining for the past few days, and as you can see on some of these maps here, the clouds aren't too thick either. Having said that, we are in the wet season now. You should expect rain if you're coming here over the next few months. It may or may not happen. That's what happens in the rainy season in Indonesia. You sometimes get rain for the whole week or even a couple of weeks, and you can get really rained in. I've had that before. It's not so common, but you can also have periods of absolutely no rain when you're in the wet season. It's a bit variable, but it's more common than not to get rain on an almost daily basis, at least for an hour or so. The great thing about it though is that it doesn't ruin your holiday. You can work around it. That's just a long way of saying the weather's still pretty good. Let's talk about property. I'm a really big fan of the people over at Bali Moves, and today we're going to have a look at a few properties that are listed on their website and talk about them a little bit. First up, we have a 1-bedroom house in beachside Sanur. Now, when I saw the price of this, I was very intrigued. How can it be so cheap? The price is 70 million per year. Beachside Sanur, that is incredible value at this point in time. You can't even really get anything that cheap on the west side normally. So when you see something beachside for that price, you sit up and take notice. The description reads that it's a 50 square meter building. So that's where the negative comes in, because that's quite small. But it's quite livable if there's only 2 of you, or if there's only 1 of you. You know, you have a terrace, a kitchen, you have 1 bedroom with an ensuite. It's furnished with an air conditioner, cooktop, fridge and microwave. And what they also say is it's somehow connected to the owner of the house next door. That's a negative. Like, that's a red flag as soon as I hear that. So they say that private access will be shut somehow by the time you rent this place. But that's something that you'd want to get in writing for sure. Living with other people can sometimes turn into a disaster. So you don't want people being able to access your place while you're not there, or even worse, while you are there. Having said that, for the price, it's certainly something you'd have to have a look at if you were trying to save money and you were interested in living beachside and you don't mind living in a smaller little place, the size of a pokey little apartment. I would be very interested to see how good that place is for 70 million per year. I think it's pretty interesting. Now, this next place is a 2-bedroom villa, only for rent on a short-term basis until May next year, but I wanted to put it in because it looks absolutely fantastic. It's brand new. It was only built last year. The gardens look incredible. The pool looks great. Now, on the description, they say that it's 2 bedrooms with ensuite and 1 guest toilet. It's 200 square meters of land with 150 square meter building. Now, that's pretty large for Sanur. If you get 200 square meters of land with 150 square meter building in Sanur, I think you feel fairly spacious. Under that, it starts to get a little bit cramped, but I'm on a smaller block of land than that now, and there's only 2 of us. Now, I feel pretty okay. But when you've got a big pool like that taking up a lot of your land, I think that's where you have to compromise a little bit. So this one at 200 square meters and 150 square meters of building looks pretty good. It appears to be west side of the bypass. They're saying it's 10 minutes drive to the tourist area. That basically means west side, I think. It's not beach side anyway. But what I really liked about this place is it just looks really good with those windows and the way the doors work. A lot of villas these days in Bali have these. Look, I really don't like it. They've got sliding doors to get you from your bedroom out to the pool, or out from the lounge room to the pool. And for me, it just seems like almost like a, I don't know, supermarket, or I don't know, some office building when you have these sliding doors. I know that you don't really have sliding doors in supermarkets, but there's just something about them that makes me feel like you're not really in a house anymore, that you're in some sort of shoddy constructed villa. The thing is, with this particular building, it's got these custom built black doors that you pull open to get out of your living room or your bedroom into the pool area. I really love it, and it just looks very stylish. I'd love to live in a place like this. Now, the price is 25 million per month. And if you're only going to rent it for 6 months, it's a pretty good deal. I mean, what's that? 150 million for 6 months in a place like that? It looks absolutely fantastic. And it's probably ideal for someone who wants to come over to Bali and test the waters. They don't really know whether they want to live here permanently or not. So you just get a bit of a 6-month rental, dip your toes in, find out whether you like it or not, have a look around for something more permanent while you're here. I think it's fantastic. The next place we have is a brand new villa. It's fantastic. This is the sort of, it's 160 million per year. And this is the sort of thing that you're seeing pop up around the place when people are constructing new villas and renting them out. There's a minimum rental term of 5 years on this one. And I think it's fairly good value for what you get for such a new place. Of course, you can get cheaper, you can get more expensive. Now, the location, of course, is the thing that determines how expensive places are in Sanur. This must be west side. We don't know where. It's not beachside, that's for sure, because it says 10 minutes to Sanur downtown. I wish on Bali Moves they'd tell you exactly where these places are, or give you a little bit more specificity, because if you're north of the harbour, for example, you're going to be stuck in traffic if you want to get down into the middle of town. Whereas if you're just across the bypass, there's no traffic at all. But anyway, this looks really interesting. Now, looking at the description here, a nice sized swimming pool, you've got a nice open living room and kitchen area. You've got 2 bedrooms, which are side by side with their own bathrooms, built on 150 square meters of land, and it's 100 square meters building size. A fair sized building, fair sized block of land. It won't feel too pokey, especially if there's only 2 of you there. It's got air conditioning and all that sort of stuff as well. I really like the idea of these new style villas for a 5-year rental or something like that. It means you don't need to spend too much money to go and get one, but you're still going to get a really new modern place and be really comfortable there as well. Now, this place in particular really, made me a little bit interested, because I've been seeing in recent times a lot of new villas going for 250 million, 350 million a year, which for me is an absolute rip-off. I mean, I could go and get a villa in Spain for much cheaper than that. I could go and probably live in many of the major cities around the world for cheaper than that. I can certainly go and get a place in Sydney, although not a really good one, for less than $35,000 a year. This place at 160 million, for me, looks to be a pretty good value place. A bit reasonable, a bit fair in terms of pricing. You might even be able to negotiate it to get it maybe 140 million a year. And I'm sure most people are going to be happy in a place like that. Now, once again, I want to just give a disclaimer. Please do not go into any property deals in Bali without seeing a lawyer first. A notaris is what we would call them in Indonesia. Do not believe what anyone tells you. Only believe what the notaris tells you, because you can get done for a lot of money here and have no legal recourse. If you go and transfer all this money across to someone, they might just disappear, or they may not disappear, but they just won't give you your money back and you'll have no legal recourse. It's very difficult once you've given money to someone to get it back if you don't agree with what happened. So please, please, please see a notaris and make sure you know what your legal standing is before you go and hand over money to anyone. Let's get on to Q&A. We've got some really good questions this week, and if you have any questions you'd like answered in the next video, please make sure you comment below. Let me know what the questions are, because it's a really good way of sharing information with people. First up, Wild CX8 asks, hello, thanks for the info. If one is staying at one of the hotels on the beach, would it be better to pay the extra for the buffet breakfast, or just walk along the path you're walking and get breakfast from the cafes you just mentioned? Now, this is a really interesting one. Do you pay extra for the buffet breakfast, or do you just go out and have one of the wonderful breakfasts at one of the many cafes all around Sanur? Well, for me, it depends. If you're staying at somewhere like the Hyatt and you don't mind spending a bit of extra money, the breakfast at the Hyatt or the Undas is absolutely sensational, and I'd have breakfast there every time if I was staying there. It is expensive though, so if you're trying to save money, well, you maybe only get a few breakfasts there and then go out for the rest of them. If I was staying at the other hotels along the beach, and I won't name them, I've seen some of the breakfasts that they're serving up there and they're a little bit old school. Any of those, I just wouldn't bother with the buffet breakfast. I'd just go out to places like Lila Pantai, which is awesome for breakfast, or go and get a croissant at Umba, or even go and get a smoothie bowl down at Genius Cafe near the Mercure. All those places are fantastic to go and get breakfast from. You don't need to have a buffet breakfast inside your hotel. And the good thing about having breakfast outside your hotel, it spreads your money around a little bit and helps some of those more independent businesses. DJM Sydney asks, hi Adam, what is the average daily wage for hotel resort staff, inclusive of their service charge, and do cafe and restaurant staff earn the same amount? What is considered a generous but not exorbitant tip for a tourist to leave at a cafe restaurant tour guide? Now, I'll first get on to tipping. If someone's already receiving a service charge, which they generally will do in a more upmarket modern cafe or a hotel, if they're receiving the service charge, which they generally are, you don't need to tip. I would just say do not tip. It's crazy. People are already getting 11, I think, or 10% on top of the bill, or 5%, and you might already paying 200, 300,000. They're getting 5%. It adds up. It's a lot of money. You don't need to tip. If you're at a smaller place, tipping, look, it's not part of the Indonesian culture. You don't need to do it. I don't do it. I don't tip. I don't even leave a few scraps. It's just the way that it is. You don't need a tip. Now, if you want to and you're feeling generous and kind, you can do that. There's nothing wrong with it, but I don't do it. And the reason I don't do it is there's a bit of an attitude with some people that the poor Balinese, they need our money. It's nothing to me, but it's a lot to them. You've got to understand that the Balinese don't need your pity. If you want to see poverty, get out to some of the other islands in Indonesia and you'll see poverty. And then you'll know that the people in Bali that are working in somewhere like the Hyatt or the Undas, those staff are actually on very good salaries. Now, of course, everyone could do with a little bit more money, and I don't begrudge anyone trying to give a little bit of extra money to someone who might want a little bit of extra money, but I don't do it. With that said, we should talk about what people are paid in Bali officially. The official minimum salary is around the 2.5 million rupiah mark per month, which is quite okay. There are lower minimum salaries around Indonesia. There are also higher ones. In somewhere like Jakarta, it is quite high now, a lot higher than that. The thing that tops up a lot of people's salaries in Bali, of course, is the service charge. But if you have a staff getting the minimum salary and they're working in McDonald's, that's it. They're not going to get any extra. So, someone at McDonald's is earning a lot less than someone working at the Hyatt. Now, 2.5 million is not a great amount to live on in Bali. You're probably going to be living with your extended family, and you would need other people in the family to be earning money as well so that you can make ends meet. But it can get worse than that. It can get a lot worse. There are a lot of people working around Bali who are informal workers, that they aren't being paid a minimum wage. A lot of the builders that you see walking around the place will not be being paid 2.5 million a month. A lot of the people that are working in warungs or some of the smaller shops will not be being paid 2.5 million a month, and every cent to them matters. It's so bad that I know in other parts of Indonesia, for people that aren't earning the minimum wage, they will almost never eat meat. Almost never. Only if it's perhaps given to them at Idul Adha, where they slaughter goats, or maybe during Ramadan if someone comes and gives them a bit of meat, but they won't be eating meat almost ever. They'll be surviving on. So the protein will be eggs, tofu, tempeh. They'll be eating a lot of veggies and a lot of rice. In fact, most of the food they're eating and most of the calories will be coming from the rice. So it's a bit of a long-winded way to say that the minimum wage is about 2.5 million. There are people earning less, but the people that you're most likely to encounter in your daily travels when you're visiting Bali in a hotel and a restaurant, they're going to be paid a bit more than that. And tipping is totally optional. It's up to you. Next question is from Kevin Antonovich. He asks, thanks mate, informative as usual. That's not the question. Interested in your thoughts about other locations you would live in Bali. For example, what would Ahmed be like? Now, before I actually relocated to Bali from Java, I did a bit of a survey around the place to see where I wanted to live. And I had my mind set on Ubud. I'd always loved Ubud. I mean, I have a bit of a soft spot for Ubud, and I'd always dreamt of living in Ubud. So my plan before moving was to go to Ubud. So Susan and I, we got a motorbike and we went around to a few different places and stayed there for a few nights. First stop was Ubud, where I thought, yeah, we're gonna live here. And when I got there and really started to feel the vibe of the place, it was totally different to what I remember it being even just 5 years ago. Really, it's changed drastically. And for me, that change was enough for me to say, do not live in Ubud. And the main issue for me was traffic. So my list of priorities about, where to live, the things that are really important to me. Number one of importance to me is traffic. I don't care if I live in a hovel, so long as I do not encounter traffic on my daily commute to exercise. And on that note, the second most important thing is somewhere to exercise. Now in Ubud, there's not many flat areas. I tried to exercise around that soccer field, and I ran around there a few times, and there was dog crap everywhere, and there was rubbish in the corners. Luckily that's all gone now because I've bulldozed it and made it a car park. Can you believe that? So for me, Ubud was out, full of traffic, and there was nowhere to exercise, and it just wasn't practical for me. Now, other people are going to have a different opinion about Ubud, that's for sure. But for me, it was not a fit, even though as a visitor, it was just a dream. The next place I tried was Ahmed, and I love Ahmed. And to live there, I think it could be really good as well. It's so peaceful. It's only really just developing now as a more busy expat place. There are new places and villas going up like you wouldn't believe. I really love it. It's a drier part of the island. It has a different vibe there. There's a huge flat area in Ahmed, which you wouldn't normally see if you're a visitor there. And that's where all the expats are building their villas. They're not really building them on those big hills and bays that most people would stay on as a visitor. It's a good area. The problem with Ahmed for me was that it's just too far from the airport, and I travel a lot. I'm not always in Bali. I'm in and out, in and out. And for me, being 3-4 hours from the airport was just really just too far. If it wasn't for that, I'd seriously consider Ahmed. Now, there are other places to live in Bali as well. There is the Bukit area, which people are now calling Uluwatu. Again, traffic issues up there I would be concerned about. Canggu, Seminyak, Legian, for me, too busy, just too much traffic, too much going on. I don't want busyness, I just want to chill. You could go and live in Denpasar and live in a real residential area where it's much cheaper, but it might suit your style. It's a little bit busy, but if you're living in somewhere like Renon, I could easily see myself living in Renon easily. There are plenty of places to go and run and exercise in Renon and Denpasar, lots of parks and fields and that sort of stuff. There are lots of cafes, lots of eateries. You're going to be a little bit more local style, but that also means a little bit cheaper as well. There's malls. I think it's pretty good, and it's just so much cheaper than most places like Sanur. Lastly, the other places that you might consider, living are things like Tabanan. So from Canggu, just start going up the mountain into the Gunung Batu Karu. Up there are heaps of roads that go up that mountain all around the place. I've noticed that a lot of people are starting to move up there as well. It used to be pretty remote up there and only 1 or 2 foreigners used to live up there, but nowadays it's a bit more popular. But again, much cheaper. The land's much cheaper up there, but you are far away from all the action. What do you really want? Do you just want peace and quiet in the middle of a village somewhere? Another area is around the east coast, Cinnamon, inland from there. There's hills and mountains and valleys and stuff like that. You could live really remote there and it could be amazing. But again, you're away from all the action. If you like cafes and restaurants and things, you're not going to get so many there. And then lastly, on the west side of the island, going out towards Negara and out there's heaps of land, vacant land out there, dirt cheap, but again, you're far from everything. It will feel like Bali, it will, but you're going to be fairly isolated, and is it really what you want? So when I was deciding where to live, Sanur was the last place I wanted to live, because the image of Sanur is very poor, boring, But when you start thinking about your life and what you want, boring's pretty good. I just want to chill out, get a feed, go and run along the beach. I don't really need much. Sanur really, for me, ticks all the boxes. And I think, as time goes on, 5, 10, 20 years, a lot of people are going to be switched on to Sanur because it really has that relaxed vibe. It still doesn't have much traffic. I think it's fantastic. I really do. It ticks all the boxes for me, and it probably will for most people. You don't have to be old to live in Sanur. There's a lot of young people that would really enjoy it, but they just don't know it yet. Hey, thanks for all your questions. Make sure you leave some more in the comments below so I've got more things to answer next time I make a video. That just about does it for today's Sanur sessions. Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to keep up to date with all things Sanur. I will catch you next time.